Just give it a few seconds, latency, and then I'll start. Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome again to another free live training workshop organized by your favorite cloud learning platform, K21 Academy, where you learn from the experts. Today, we are back again with another free live webinar for you guys. Today, we are covering Kubernetes certification for beginners. So, all the people who are very new to this, this is going to be very beneficial for you guys. My name is Shivansh. I'm from Team K21 Academy and I'm your host and moderator for today's session. I hope you all ready and fired up for this learning packed for Kubernetes certification for beginners. What, why, how, and we'll be taking up your question answers as well. So for all the people who are joining us, wherever you guys are joining us, please do put down your comment as in terms of which platform you have joined in. Okay, moving on. Today we have with us two very highly experienced and trained Docker, Kubernetes, and DevOps cloud professionals with more than 3 decades of combined total experience. That's more than my age, guys. So just to give you a little reference on that part. So we've got very experienced panel today. First, we have Mr. Atul Kumar, who is an author, cloud expert, and founder of K21 Academy with 21 plus years of experience in the IT industry. He has worked on some of the biggest cloud migrations in UK and have personally helped over 8,000 plus individuals just like you with their career move to cloud and DevOps. We also have Mr. Rohan with us today, who has 17 plus years of IT experience as infrastructure and database architect. He has multiple certifications to his name like CKA, CKS, RHCSA, and many more. He has even worked in international Fortune 500 firms like JP Morgan and many more. So moving on to the next section, today we'll be covering Kubernetes certification for beginners. We'll be answering your questions as well, and we'll be covering what, why, and how, the three very basic parts of any certification. So before we move forward, let me get to know you guys a little better, to know our audience a little better. So why don't you guys put in your name, where are you from, and which certification are you currently trying to get, like Docker, Kubernetes, or cloud, or anything else? Just put it down in the comment section of wherever you guys are watching it from right now. And also one thing I'd like to add in before I give it to Atul sir, that guys, these live webinars and free training workshops that we are doing here at K21 Academy is exclusively for your betterment. So if there's any other topic that you want us to be covering, please do put us, maybe DM us, maybe give us a private message, or put it in the comment section of whatever post that is coming out, so that we can come up with those kind of webinars and free trainings for you guys. It's very essential that we have that communication with all our followers, with all our viewers, with all our learners maintained, so that we can provide you very quality content with whatever you guys are interested to watch. Over to you, sir. So you're not audible. You have put yourself on mute.
Okay, 1 second. Hold on. Can you take control of this or let me know? Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible now.
Yeah, but then nothing. My audio is not configured properly. Just give me 1 minute. How do I change cam or mic and audio? I'm just checking. Default is Jabber. Okay, speaker Jabber. Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are, sir.
Oh, brilliant. So, guys, thank you very much, and sorry for that confusion about this Kubernetes. Also, just tell me if you're live on our LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook. Uh, and Shivansh, if you can share me the link of LinkedIn, because I think I just want to make sure that we are. I want to make sure that we are. I can answer the questions, or I hope you will pick up the questions and I'll answer them on LinkedIn as well.
Okay, sure, I'll do that.
Yep. Okay. So if you share me the link as well, and then I'll pick up the questions. Guys, welcome here. This is Atul from Team K21 Academy. I have with me, as Shivans mentioned, one of the experts who is a Docker Kubernetes certified consultant. He's a Kubernetes certified Kubernetes trainer as well, Rohan. Um, so how many of you guys attended last? I think last week or last to last week we had a Docker certification preparation. So how many of you were there? Let me know in the chat window as well. And just to say hi, where are you from, and what is your objective for today's session? We are on top of our hour. So this is a free live training on Kubernetes certification. We'll be talking about three certifications: CKA, Certified Kubernetes Administrator; CKS, which is Certified Kubernetes Security; and CKAD, which is Certified Kubernetes Application Developer. What, why, and how? We also have a lot of uh, I have a big agenda, and we only have 1 hour. So we will try to answer as many, or we'll try to cover as much as possible today. We also have a live demo as well, but if we can't finish all in time, we will make sure that we will cover another week, or next week same time we'll be covering that the same topic. Now, Shivansh, if you can do the full screen, and then I'll go from there. If you can do the full screen, please, on the screen, and let me know once you can see the full screen.
It is full screen now, sir.
Brilliant. So what we are going to learn today is that we'll first begin with the Kubernetes certifications. There are three certifications available: CKA, CKS, and CKAD. Just for everyone's benefit, can someone confirm that you can hear me loud and clear from all my three channels: YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn? So we know that you are all here, and we are not you're all audible, and screens are moving as well. So, and then I'll proceed, and if you get a notification from any one of the channels, let me know, so I know that it's working fine, Shivansh. Yeah.
Yes, sir, it is fine for Facebook, YouTube. We'll just get a comment from LinkedIn and we'll be
If
fine.
someone
And
can
for
confirm,
LinkedIn.
or LinkedIn as well. Brilliant. So now
Yeah.
let's so stay attentive, and let's begin with first what we are going to cover. As I said, we'll be first beginning with Kubernetes certification: CKA, CKS, and CKAD. In that, also, as I said last week, I covered containers, and which is a Docker, or Docker is an implementation of a container. So I'll do a quick recap on what all things we covered, so that if you have not yet watched, I would highly recommend you to watch that, because underlying Kubernetes use containers. So you should be having a fair idea about what is an image registry, how do you start and stop containers, installation, etc. So it will be quite useful. Then we are going to look at Kubernetes overview, what and why. We'll go on to the Kubernetes architecture. There are three, what are the different components on that Kubernetes architecture. Then we'll look at installation and configuration of Kubernetes. There are different ways to install. We are going to pick one of the way, which is KubeADM. And we'll try to, as I said, we will try to give this as a demo as well, where our expert, Kubernetes trainer and expert, he's going to show you how to configure that Kubernetes or Kubernetes cluster, what we are going to use, so that you can try out on your machines or your cloud environment. We'll also look at demo of deploying a Kubernetes cluster. Then we'll be looking at other things like Kubernetes component. Now, I'm hoping that we should be able to cover in today, in next 1 hour, all these things. And if time permits, we'll continue the remaining parts, which is Kubernetes components like pods, deployments, service, config map, secrets, all those things you should be knowing. We'll be also talking about then, if time permits, otherwise we'll take it next week, same time. We'll also be talking about Kubernetes networking, Kubernetes storage, and then we'll take some question answers and quizzes. Now, your question answers, don't wait for that particular topic. If you have any questions, be it related to Docker, containers, Kubernetes, any specific certification, or any background specific to, or any question specific to your background, make sure that you ask questions. Um, if you are watching it now, and we'll try to cover that question today or now, if you're watching that replay, or if we get too many questions and if we can't cover them, I'll make sure that my team will be answering them behind the scene for you. Also, um, I think we have other experts as well who will be answering and on these questions. Now, we always get excellent feedback in these sessions. I'd love to rate us today on how we are doing, and if we can add or At some point in time after the demo, I'll be asking for the feedback. We always strive to get the best feedback. And your time, even though it's a free class, your time should be well spent over here over the next 1 year. Next 1 hour. So make sure you learn something, and also give us a feedback, which I'll be talking a little bit later. Now, so far we have more than 350 or 380 feedbacks, all 4.8 out of 5 on Google. So just to tell you that whatever we are going to do here should be with a lot of value. Now, before we go further, if you have those who are coming from YouTube, and if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, I'll highly recommend you to subscribe. If you're watching on LinkedIn or Facebook, on a weekly basis, 2 or 3 videos we are doing are related to containers, Kubernetes, and not just that, but also cloud, which is AWS Cloud, Azure Cloud, Oracle Cloud, or Google Cloud. So the URL, k21academy.com/YouTube. We have around, I was told last week we had 20,000 plus subscribers now, and we're growing, uh, and we're releasing good weekly videos on the portal, and you'll also know when we go live on the YouTube. Now, before I proceed further, I want you to tell me a little bit with your experience on Kubernetes. Are you new to Kubernetes? Then type B for beginner. If you are already working on the Kubernetes but not certified, then type I, intermediate. But if you're already working and certified Kubernetes administrator or certified Kubernetes developer or security professional, type E. So let me know in the chat window, B or I or E. And I'm going to read, or I'll ask Shivans to read out some of the names so that I can see. Also tell us where exactly you're from, which country you're from. You're from US, UK, India, Europe, Middle East, Singapore. So we know where our audience are coming and where are you based as well. And if you have any questions related to your career, post that as well. Now, before I take and see a few of you, just quickly tell you about me. I'm an author. I have around 21 years of experience based in UK, and I primarily work on helping customers on moving to cloud. I'm a certified cloud architect. What I'm proud of is I've helped individuals like you, on 8,500 individuals like you, to learn cloud and cloud native technologies. I'm also going to bring here, and I will be bringing him for the question answers. We have with us Rohan, our Kubernetes Docker and Kubernetes trainer. He's an expert in this, 17 years of IT experience as an architect. He's a CNCF certified Kubernetes Docker trainer. And yeah, so you are in for a treat as well. So with that, let me know where are you from, and anyone here, what is the more feedback we are getting? Are we getting, Shivan's, more beginner, intermediate, or E? Are we getting more B, I, or E?
Majority of our viewers are beginners from all the different social media handles,
Mhm.
and we've got audience members from all over the world, with people being from India, UK, US, and many more.
Oh, brilliant. So how many are from UK that would love to hear? I'm based in London, in northwest part of London, so let me know about that as well. Brilliant. So let's move on and first begin with why containers and Kubernetes. Again, I covered this in last week, or last week, when we said containers. There are 242 billion, B for billion, downloads, and alone in last 1 month, this was July 2020. So it's growing number rapidly. 11 billion containers download in last 1 month alone, which is a 5.5 billion up from last month or previous year ago in 2020. I'm talking about these numbers from Docker. So you can imagine what kind of a work has been going on containers and Kubernetes. Now, if you look at container market, we'll cover that as well. Container market is growing aggressively year on year in terms of revenue, $4.3 billion just on alone containers. And Kubernetes is one of the main orchestration tool, configuration management tool. So if you have not yet started, if you want a application configuration management, be it networking, storage, testing, application deployment, administration, whether on premise or cloud, whether you're a developer or a tester or an administrator or an architect, it's high time. If you have not started Kubernetes, then it's to start Kubernetes on, and that will shows in the job opportunities. Now, if you already know why, that's why you are here, good. If you don't know, just after this call, after this session, go and type Kubernetes jobs in your country. There are hundreds and hundreds of job opportunities available, and Kubernetes comes under DevOps. DevOps is a methodology where you do your development and operations. So there are lots and lots of job opportunities available in Kubernetes world. But I'm talking about, we said, I at the start I said, oh, it's a Kubernetes certification. There are a lot of job opportunities available. Why do I need to worry about certification? And what those certifications are. And once I cover that, then we'll talk about the actual learning on what all things you need to learn as a part of CKA or CKAD or CKS. What are these as well? So before we go, I explain you about Kubernetes certifications. What we have noticed is now, if you were like 3 4 years back, that would have been different story. But now, especially after COVID, what's happening is there are a lot of job openings are there, but at the same time there are a lot of opening. Oh, sorry, the CVs are being sent as well. And if you're part of my sessions in past, you probably know the drill. Let me know, or if you're new, how many are new, how many are coming back. Let me know which one. If you have two CVs to pick, sorry, you have one CV to pick. Let's suppose you got 30 CVs, out of which you have to pick only one CV. Out of these two CVs, which one will you pick, left one or right one? Let me know the chat window, and let me see also on my YouTube handle, which one will you pick. And Shivans, once you get the notification, let me know, because I know we are 30 minutes late, or 30 seconds late. In the meantime, Vinay for YouTube, be beginner. Andrew from YouTube, beginner. Okay. Informative Ed is saying R. Andrew is saying R. R. Why right one as well? Tell me a reason as well. Why R? It'll be good to know why R as well. Vinay. Oh, sorry. Vishwajit R. Prem is R. And some of you guys are mentioning, yes, right side has the certification, absolutely, and that is the power of certification. That doesn't mean that you can get away just by having the certification. You have to have the knowledge, but the certification will help you in picking up your CV first. So with that, let's first look at what are the certifications. There are three certifications. One is CKA, Certified Kubernetes Administrator, CKA. Second is Certified Kubernetes Application Developer, CKAD. And third is Certified Kubernetes Security Specialist, which is CKS. Now, who this first one is for? And tell me you as well, what's your background? And if you have any doubt which one you should be picking, let me know that as well. So first one, which is CKA, highly recommended to pretty much uh, anyone who is working as an architect, anyone working on administration, application support, testing part, or overall management. If you're working on day-to-day basis about Kubernetes or containers, then you should be highly picking up CKA. That's my recommendation for you. If you're a developer or an architect, then you should be picking developer track or developer with administration. If you're an architect, make sure that you do both of them. If you're an administrator or a application support engineer, cloud engineer, uh, or day-to-day operations person, then you should be picking administration with left one. If you're a developer or an architect, then again developer middle one. And third one is security. If you are an again architect, so architect will be pretty much all three of them. But if you focus on security, then you should be picking security. But for security, which is the right one, there is a prerequisite which is CKA. This is the prerequisite. So let me know, and we'll be picking up one or two questions from our audience, which is on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, to see if you have any specific. You tell me your background, and we'll tell you which one you should be doing. Now, what we have done is I've already done a blog in past covering difference between CK, CKAD, and CKS, Certified Kubernetes Administrator, Developer, and CKS. You can check it out after this class on by going to k20academy.com/Kubernetes 24. That will tell you about the differences and which one you should be picking. But I'll try to cover as much as here if within the short time that we have. So we'll first picking a Certified Kubernetes Administrator. There are five main topics you'll be should be doing. First one is cluster architecture, which we'll try to cover today. Installation and configuration, we'll try to cover that as well today, which is the majority of chunk. After troubleshooting is the first part, which is 25%. Then workload and scheduling, we'll go a little bit deeper later. What does workload and scheduling meaning? Then the two important topics, or one another important topic, is services and networking, which is 20%. Storage is 10%, and then troubleshooting debugging 30%. So if you look at, it's more targeted for application support guys, administrator guys, if you're deploying the application, if you're managing the application, if you're managing the servers, if you're managing the infrastructure, then this is for you, this particular certification. Now, the exam, it's an online exam. You can go do it from home. It's roughly around 2 hours. There are only 15 to 18 questions. So it's not a multiple choice questions. It's actually you have to do the exam. You need to write the exam, and the you will get some tasks to be done, and we'll see some of the sample questions a little bit later. You need to have 66% or higher. The exam or certificate is valid for 3 years. You have one free retake, which means you can, if you fail, you can take one more time and attempt. Otherwise, you have to buy the exam again if you fail 2 times. Then the Kubernetes version currently out in the market as we speak is 1.22. I think 22 came last week only. So currently, the exam is checked based on version 1.21, and there are no prerequisite for the CKA certification. Now, for this certification, we recommend this around 8 week roadmap, 8 week to prepare for the or understand the CKA, and then remaining 4 weeks to prepare for the certification, practice your exam, and then prepare your CV and project work. So, out of which, on last class we covered microservices and Docker and containers. We covered networking and storage, or configuration management of Docker, and that we covered last week in our free class. So again, I'll tell you how you can get hold of that if you missed that. Today we'll cover some part from Kubernetes architecture installation, and the remaining part, if time permits, we'll be covering you a little bit later or next week as well. If time permits, we'll do it today. Otherwise, we'll do it next week on this. So, and once you have learned all these things, then you prepare for exam. You also do practice papers, and you do some project work so that, and prepare your CV so that you can start applying for your CV, or on for the job opportunities. Or if you're already working, maybe apply for a much higher paid job. Now, the as I said, it's not just a multiple choice question. It's actually you're doing the work. So this is where you're doing the work. We recommend you to perform these labs. Now, these are the labs we recommend. There are around 30 plus hands-on lab, which we'll be covering later as well. But if you want to check it out, all list of all the hands-on lab, you can check out by going to k21academy.com/CKA05, where CKA stands for Certified Kubernetes Administrator 05. Now, so first 11 are all about containers and Docker, and then remaining are about Kubernetes, like bootstrapping, which means deploying the Kubernetes cluster using kubeadm or on cloud, or deployment. Again, you may not understand them right now, but over the next 1 or 2 weeks, we'll be able to try and answer, like help you with understanding these labs, what these means. Now, um, again, as I said, it's on written over blog CKA05, k21academy.com/CKA05. It will tell you. And if there's any, if we have already done a video on those labs, you can check out those videos and perform those labs. Now, what we do is we also have a step-by-step comprehensive training program where we teach all these things in detail, in depth, with self-study as well as the weekly live interactive session. Today we are here for just 1 hour, but these sessions happen every Saturday and Sunday where we go deep into these topics, we learn. So it's a program which is 17 modules, 70 plus lessons, 33 plus hands-on lab. We prepare you for the exam and the on-job support as well. And there are limited seats, on around 50 seats we limit it so that we can pay special attention. And in the month of August, we are also doing the giving a bonus Docker certification, which is DCA Docker certification. Apart from that, we'll be covering CKA as well. Now, I'll talk about a free class on to see you if you want to go deeper into this particular program. And just to inspire you guys that it's possible, there are guys who have done these certifications in past, and you should be able to do it whether you're already working or a fresher or have not worked on these things. Again, these are some of the guys. We'll talk about that if time permits. If you want to see what they have done, these guys have done who were like you maybe a couple of months back and now certified and working with companies. You can check it out by going to k21academy.com/customer reviews. Now, with that, as I said, there'll be free class. We will be talking about that free class later. Or if you want, after this class, you can check it out by going to k21academy.com/CKA02. In that free class, we talk about whatever we've covered. Maybe we do recap, we go a little bit deeper into these topics like Docker, Kubernetes. Today we are deploying an application on container, or sorry, on Kubernetes. In the class, we are going to deploy a different application, and then about these certifications. So if you're interested, you can check it out by going to k21academy.com/CKA02. Do. Now, the second certification is CKAD, which is targeted for developers. So I think, Shivansh, if you can put in the chat window or show that URL, k21academy.com/CKA02, if anyone wants to register for the free class that we do for this is roughly around 2 hours class. Now, CKAD, that's the second one, which is Certified Kubernetes Application Developer. And this is targeted for developers, which is, again, mainly if you're coming from a developer, whether you are a Java developer, .NET developer, Python developer, PHP developer, front-end developer, back-end developer, any kind of a development work you do. If you are a junior person, then maybe just go for CKAD. If you have a couple of years of experience, then I would recommend you go for both CKAD and CKA. So there'll be some overlap between CKA and CKAD. And what we have noticed that the people who start on one, they end up doing both the CKA and CKAD. But what is different or extra here is multi-container pod, which is you running multiple containers or pods. So right now you don't know what is a pod. Or if you know the pod, let me know in the chat window if you understand. But that is what we're trying to decipher here in these free classes. And then observability, pod design. The services and networking is similar, but less weightage. And then you only need to know what a developer needs to know. But then another importance for you is persistence. And then how do you store configuration? I think configuration is important. Observability is important. These are the two important topics. And how do you design the pod? Pod is nothing but containers, or collection of one or more containers. We'll be covering that as well. And the third certification is CKA, where you have like same cluster setup that you have done on CKA. Now this security certification came in November 2020. Earlier, the CKS and CKA used to be part of same. But now, CKS was introduced back in November, as I said. It's more about security professionals or who understand the Kubernetes and they want to take it to the next level, which is security, which is quite hot in the market, in demand. That talks about 10% setup, then cluster hardening, system hardening, minimizing the microservices vulnerability if there are problems, if there are security loopholes in microservices or containers. And then how do you do the container right from a development phase to the management phase, which is supply chain, is you're developing applications on containers and then running all of them on, that's 20%. And then finally monitoring, logging, and runtime security 20%. Again, same online question. This is for 2 hours, 15 to 17 questions, and you get 66% or higher you need to score. Currently, this certificate is valid for only 2 years. Other two are valid for 3 years. This one is for valid for 2 years. And in future, they might change it to 3 years validity. Again, same thing. You take 1 year free retake. You have 1.21. Kubernetes version is 1.21, and then CKA, you need the prerequisite CKA, which means you should be certified with CKA, this particular certification, which is this particular certification. You should be certified CKA in order for you to write CKS. So that's on a high level. So that is that point clear, or any questions you want for you for me out of these three questions? Otherwise, I'll move on to the next one, please.
We've got one question on our YouTube from Seth. Is it any programming language needed for the development part?
Rohan, can you answer that? Is there any programming, or do they need to be like what programming language they need to know in order to apply for this developer? And if you're speaking, you're on mute.
Sorry about that, Atul.
No
They
problem.
absolutely do not require any, as a prerequisite, any programming knowledge as background. But since they are developers, any modern latest technology or any language they are aware of, they are either coming from Java or PHP, Golang, any of that should be okay, because we would teach them, or they would learn how to build their applications using these technologies as containers and then deploy them on Kubernetes.
Brilliant, brilliant. Absolutely spot on. So, and or sorry, I should say, yeah, no, thank you very much for that. So, yes, that's correct. And so you can come from any programming language. What you do is in here something called YAML, yet another markup language that is basically it's just a configuration management. How do you tell Kubernetes or interact with Kubernetes, which we are going to see it here today as well. Now, again, we have a 7-week roadmap about this. I'm not going to go too deep. I want to move fast because so that if anyone is interested to go a little bit deeper, same thing. On here, we have a program for Kubernetes security as well, where we go and teach in detail about Kubernetes. If you want to know, or sorry, security, and if you want to know more about security, we can go and check it out by CKS, Certified Kubernetes Security 05 is the URL for this. Yep. Now, um, again, I'll talk about if anyone is interested, let me know about the free class on CKS, and otherwise I will move on here. Now, one thing I wanted to tell you is on, as I said, in order for you to learn Kubernetes, it's good to have the Docker knowledge or container knowledge. So for last week, we had a session on containers where we talked about Docker. And Docker is one of the most famous containers. So make sure you watch that, which is available on k20academy.com/Docker22. And this is what we covered inside that in Docker, like the that was the last week YouTube video. How many of you guys attended that Docker? Let me know. But I quickly wrap up or to recap on what all things we covered. But you can check it out of this class by going to k20academy.com/Docker22. So we were a very detailed session talking about the background, why we are doing these microservices, containers, and DevOps. We looked at the application evolution model. We looked at difference between bare metal, virtual machines, and containers. We also looked at what is a container. We also looked at what is Docker within that. And then we looked at architecture of Docker. And it's important that you need to know the architecture of one of the containers. Basically, how does that container works? What is a Docker image? Whether you're using Docker or not, you still will be needing images. And for that images, you create using Docker. So whether you're a developer, administrator, you'll be interacting with Docker images. How do you create containers from images? And then how these containers are being created. All these things we have covered. So I'm not going to repeat that. We'll just move on just to make sure that in order for this session to make for you to make sense, it's good if you know that particular Docker knowledge. We also looked at Docker lifecycle or container lifecycle, basically. How do they work? Now, with that, let's move on. Actually, the orchestration part or this particular part, which is Kubernetes, what we are going to do here on this Kubernetes. So we just briefly touched base on certifications. We did a recap. This is what I want to focus on, which is today's session, Kubernetes overview, what and why, and then architecture of Kubernetes, which is we are going to look at how do you install and configure Kubernetes using kubeadm. If time permits, oh sorry, we'll definitely do a demo, but if time permits, then we'll be talking about Kubernetes components and these remaining uh, looking at the time frame, I might be pushing these remaining topics. We'll be covering these today, but remaining topics we'll cover next week, and then we'll be taking up question answers as well. So this is where Rohan, if you let me know if you or if you feel free to interrupt if you want to add something on this session which I'm adding. Yeah, and
Sure,
then
sure.
see if any questions are coming. Maybe tell me or stop me at each logical point about question answers. Yeah. So let's begin with first of all, what is Kubernetes? And before I go to Kubernetes, it's important that you understand containers. Um, and if you attended, if you know, we'll touch base briefly. Containers are nothing but lightweight way uh, that is way to build your applications and deploy them and run it across environments. So everything that your application needs, be it underlying runtime, libraries, system tools, all its dependencies and code, all everything bundled together, and then you can take that bundle and run it anywhere as long as you have a container runtime, as long as you have a Kubernetes cluster, you can run it anywhere, be it on-premise, be it AWS Cloud, Azure Cloud, Google Cloud, Oracle Cloud, Alibaba Cloud, whatever, wherever you run, you can run it freely. And that is the beauty of containers. And that is why the containers are important. But then what is this Kubernetes? Uh, so Kubernetes is where you have it's nothing but a set of building blocks which is used to deploy, maintain, and scale applications. So you can run your applications. You can you can build your application. Sorry, you can deploy your application. You can manage your containers. You can run your applications. You do monitoring. You do logging. You do security. Everything that you need from a application infrastructure in order for you to run application, that's being handled by Kubernetes. But why do we need Kubernetes? Why can't we? Because technically you can run your application on top of containers and your job done. This is what we covered in last time. And so what happens is, which is okay, if you have 1 2 3 4 5 containers are there, you can manage them individually. But in a typical enterprise, you're running 15 20 containers per host, and you have like that 15 20 host easily. So you're at given in point time, you're running 15 20 or like sorry 100 to 200 containers across different environments, very very common. So managing them individually is not easy. And that's where you need container orchestration tool, like which is nothing but a management of these containers. And that is where we said covered last time. You have Mesos, you have Kubernetes, you have the Docker Swarm as well. But why we are talking about Kubernetes? Why no one is talking about the other things, other container orchestrations? Because Kubernetes was created by Google and donated to the Cloud Native Computing Foundation (CNCF), and they have around. And I think this is an old slide or old image of 2019, 2 years back. So market share has now even bigger for Kubernetes. There are other container orchestration tools like OpenShift or Docker Swarm or ECS and so on. They have reduced. Kubernetes is picking up now, and that is why we are talking about Kubernetes now. As I said, start certified Kubernetes administrator. There are topics and there are 5 main topics. And today we are planning here to cover first one, which is cluster architecture, where we cover it talks about cluster architecture, installation and configuration, where you look at things like how do you install a cluster, how do you configure them, how do you manage highly available applications, how do you do upgrade of Kubernetes cluster, how do you do backup and restore of the Kubernetes, what is etcd and so on. And then we'll be looking at this is all about Kubernetes here. So in that there is a architecture, and I'm going to this is where I'm going to bring Rohan. He's an expert in that, but I'll tell you the simple way. So Kubernetes, the uh, in in a Kubernetes cluster, there's something called as master node, and there's something called as worker node. Master node is the one, as name suggests, is the one which is managing everything centrally, and then worker nodes is where your applications are run. Master node are also called as control plane because they are controlling the entire setup, whereas worker nodes are also called as data plane because that's where my data is residing, my applications are running on these. So what happens is, then what is whatever you see here on here left hand side, this is a one or multiple machines part of running as a master node, running some services. And these are different, maybe virtual machines or smaller machines. And these machines will have something called as container runtime. And on that container runtime, you're running 1 2 5 10 15 containers at any given point in time. So this is one machine. On that one machine, I'm running multiple containers. On this machine, I'm running multiple containers. On this machine, I'm running multiple containers. And like that, so within one machine, I'm running my multiple applications, multiple copies, and so on. And there are different components of each of these. So do you want to elaborate, Rohan, a little bit more about what all these components on master plane and are doing? And then I'll pick it here from here.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Atul. Our API server, which is a major component in our cluster, is the you can think that as the grand central station for Kubernetes. All of our communication between all of our components must go through our API server. API server also provides us authentication, authorization, mutation, admission control. Basically, any components which communicate, may it be the user who's trying to communicate with the Kubernetes cluster with the help of kubectl or a dashboard, or the internal components which go through needs to communicate to perform the activities have to go through our Kube API server. So that acts as the
So
gatekeeper for us.
Yeah, so what we'll do is when we do the demo, Rohan is going to connect to and he will deploy an application. So he's going to connect to he will fire some command. That command will actually come to the Kube API server. So he'll be running from a machine. That machine will connect to the Kube API server on there. Then you have a second component which is etcd. All my configurations, like how many nodes are there, how many worker nodes are there, how many containers are running, what is the state of that configuration, anything and everything that is kind of a configuration store. All my state, it's kind of a database which has the key value pair and saying what is where. That's my database. And Rohan, add feel free to add something that you want to add. So that's the
Yeah,
second component. Sorry.
that is spot on, Atul. So the cluster store, the HCD, is our the persistent store of the only stateful part of our cluster, which stores our entire configuration and the state of the cluster as well.
Brilliant. And then we have a Kubernetes controller, which is basically different type of managers which are managing these applications here. Yeah, on controller managers. And then you have a scheduler, which is basically scheduling your activities on different work. So let's suppose I give some task to the Kubernetes cluster, when it needs to be run, where exactly it needs to be run, what needs to be done, are all using Kube scheduler. And then you have these worker nodes where these are maybe a virtual machine or bare metal machine um, here, and these machines will have a container runtime, which could be a Docker, which could be a another CRIO, which could be another container runtime, any container runtime. On that, we have a agent which is called as kubelet. And kubelet, so my API server, which is my running on a control plane, is going to connect to my kubelet server and talking with these individual kubelet servers, which in turn, and there's another component called kube proxy, which is for networking point of view or for network connectivity point of view. So these are the different components. Again, what we have done is we have a video clip taken from our training program where we picked up and explained these architecture a little bit in detail about. You can check it out by going to k20academy.com/Kubernetes 12 here. And then you can have a another component called cloud control manager, and this is when where if you're deploying Kubernetes on cloud, be it AWS cloud like EKS, elastic Kubernetes service, or Google container, which is Google Kubernetes, which is on Google cloud, Google Kubernetes engine, or Azure Kubernetes, or on Azure containers, or Azure cloud, which is Azure Kubernetes service, AKS. All these needs underlying machine access, they need storage, they need networking. So the role of cloud controller manager is to manage the underlying infrastructure that it needs from a cloud provider like AWS or Azure or Google or Oracle or Alibaba and so on. So this is in a nutshell Kubernetes architecture. Shivans, any question that you want me to take at this point? Otherwise, we'll move on to the next one.
We do have one question from YouTube. Now
Mhm.
we're understanding what is Kubernetes, but what is the goal of this service in production?
Okay, great. So, Saif, I think from a YouTube, you're asking this question. The whatever application you run on, you tell it to Kubernetes, and Kubernetes will uh, basically manage your containers. It is going to go and deploy the application. So, we'll take an example today. You will understand that. So, we want to run an application. It could be a database application. It could be a web application. Whatever application you want to run, you can run and tell it and say, I want 5 copies, and it's a responsibility of Kubernetes to tell and make sure that it runs 5 copies. If there's any problem, if there is any issue with that application, it will automatically fix that and create a new copy. It will destroy and create a new copy. If you can even tell it to say then, if it needs to scale up, for example, load on my application increases, you tell it and say if load goes more than 80%, automatically span across other nodes and it will go and deploy it. Now take an example of you watch movie on Netflix. Any application these days, good application, they're running on Kubernetes cluster. Take an example of Netflix or Pokemon Go game, or maybe Uber, or maybe take an example of Gmail and so on. Now they don't know how many people can watch Netflix at any given point in time, but it's running on my application is running on Kubernetes cluster, my Netflix applications. So if a load, it sees load is increasing, it will automatically increase or add my containers. If the load decreases, it will decrease my containers. So that's the beauty of that architecture. Rohan, have I added it correctly, or do I want to add something as well on here?
No, absolutely spot on, Atul.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Now, what you can do is you can do the Kubernetes setup. And here today we are going to give a demo, but you can deploy Kubernetes in multiple ways. You can deploy it one at a time. You can go and different components. So you can go and deploy these components individually. You can say, I'm installing a Kube API server. Then I'm doing etcd. Then I'm setting up controller. Then I'm setting kube scheduler. Then I'm deploying these worker nodes. I'm installing these individual container runtime, kubelet, kube proxy. So that's one way of doing. First way is deploying these components separately. Some people do it, not covered in, it doesn't come in your exam. And most of the time people do these days using another tool called kubeadm. Kubeadm is an executable, again, the tool which we are going to use today to deploy if time, like hopefully I need to move on quickly and then we'll deploy. And then finally, you can also do Kubernetes, manage Kubernetes, which is Kubernetes on AWS cloud or Azure cloud or Google cloud and so on. Now, we have done a step-by-step video on, if you want to go deep, by going to k8s Kubernetes 30, and you can check out these Kubernetes installation setup. How to do the same thing on AWS cloud, which is called as EKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service on AWS. So same Kubernetes running on AWS cloud. You can set it up. There's a video, and AWS gives you a free account. So you can try it out on deploying in your AWS cloud, which is k8sacademy.com/Kubernetes 17. Now, if you're part of our Kubernetes training, which is Certified Kubernetes Administrator or Certified Kubernetes Application Developer or Certified Kubernetes Security, any of our trainings you're part of, we give you and we teach you right from AWS how do you set up this and go in detail with lab and videos for you. But if you want to check it out, if you want to try it out yourself, you can check it out by going to k8sacademy.com/Kubernetes 17. Now, one more thing before I hand it over for a demo is about virtual machine. What is VM, containers, and pods? So where virtual machine I mentioned to you is what you see here, these three boxes here, box number 1, box number 2, box number 3, or this control plane. That can represent a virtual machine, or it's a bare metal. Again, if you want to go a little bit deeper, go back to my previous session, which is I think Docker 22, if I'm not wrong. Previous week we covered. Then container, we also is where you have your application running. And then, but what Kubernetes sees is Kubernetes look at as a pod. So pod is nothing but a collection of one or more containers where your application run. So application run on top of container, and collection of one or more containers is pod. Again, I think I have a video on, or we have a blog on to cover this about this difference. I'll cover that in a minute or one more time on pod. Now, what you do, again, this is another representation of that same Kubernetes cluster. You have a master node, you have a worker node, and on that worker node, multiple worker nodes. In that worker node, you run pod, and within pod, you have containers. So in this pod, you have 3 containers. You can have one container, minimize one container. You can have more containers. Best practice is one container per pod. But you can have, in certain scenarios, you might want to have multiple containers. So you have containers running on inside a pod, and pod runs on top of a worker node, and then these are, you have a managed by master node. Is point clear? Is that point clear? So put it in the chat window if this point is clear, everyone. um, uh, if you put in the chat window, Saf is saying on YouTube, it means Kubernetes is a service which maintains target. Is there no downtime in our real-time application? Am I right? Yeah, that's the objective of having Kubernetes, to say no downtime, and you do deployment all with zero downtime and availability, high availability point of view. Absolutely spot on. Yeah. Okay. So today we are going to show you now in a minute about the pod and deployment and so on. There are other things as well which I wanted to cover. Kubernetes objects, which will be probably planning to cover next week, which is what is pod. We'll go pod I'm going to cover today, but what is deployment, what is service, and there are other things as well which will be talking next, a lot of other things. So pod is nothing but, as I said earlier, you have a worker node. In that you have services running, maybe container, which is a Docker or other container. You have a kubelet, which is an agent. In that you run a pod, and that pod will have maybe one container, or pod may be having 2 containers. So one pod, which is one container, have second pod with the 2 containers, like that. So within a pod you will have container. In this case, I'm running a Nginx container, which is nothing but a Nginx is a web server that can act as a load balancer, Rohan, correct me, Nginx, or is it just a web server
That is correct. It acts as a load balancer as well
as well?
if
Brilliant.
configured that way.
Now, you deploy your pod or any application using a YAML file. This is a representation of YAML, which is nothing but yet another markup language, which is nothing but a plain English, but it's very itchy in terms of formatting. You should have one space or two space and three space and so on. And then you have like you should have a dot and colon or something. Now, this is where I'm saying I'm deploying a kind of pod. Pod I'm deploying, name of the pod and label. We'll cover label maybe next week or something. But again, if you're part of our training programs, we go in deep into these things. Then you have a container where in this case, I have a this application is deployed using an image, and image is Nginx. In this case, it's an Nginx image. And my name of my container is my web container. And it's listening on port number 80 on a protocol, TCP protocol. So this is where I'm deploying and this is what we're going to show you, and we'll cover that as well here. And then there are other namespaces and so on. So without taking much time now, I want to hand over to Rohan about this demo that we wanted to show you here, so that you can get a feeling of. So and then in the meantime, if you have any questions, let me know. I'll be picking up questions as well. So Shivansh, if you can shift the screens now, please.
Yeah, it's done.
Oh, great.
Thank
So
you. Thank you so much, Atul. Like Atul was mentioning, we can deploy our Kubernetes on various different cloud pods we have, like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. And he also mentioned we can do that on premises as well. In this session, what we're going to do in this demonstration is I'm going to demonstrate how do we set up our Kubernetes cluster using the virtual machines what I have locally. Let me show you real quick. I have a VMware workstation installed, and I have configured and created a couple of machines. I have three identical machines. I've called them, master, node 1, and node 2. Basically, they're all identical in nature. They all have the same RAM, same CPU, and all of that. Right? Let me bring this aside. And and it's also a notion that it's too difficult to set up a Kubernetes cluster and all of that. I'm going to show it to you how easy it is to secure or securely bootstrap or create a Kubernetes cluster using the tools what we have. Right. So before I run the commands and set up the cluster, Kubernetes expects our virtual machine to be in a specific format. I mean, it expects few prerequisites to be taken care of. One of them may be the swap being disabled. It expects the runtime, that is Docker, to be installed. It expects the tools like kubeadm, kubectl to be pre-configured and installed. Right? It expects the full connectivity between the machines what I have, like the master and the node machines. It also expects them to have the unique hostname, MAC address, and all of that. What I've done in the interest of time is I've configured all of them. What I haven't done is I haven't bootstrapped the cluster yet. I'm right now on my master host, right? If I just quickly do my clad etc/host, I have three hosts. I've called them master, node 1, and node 2. And right now I'm on master, and I'm going to show you how easy, or if we do our prerequisites right, how easily we can bootstrap our cluster. I'm going to make use of a tool called kubeadm, which is a secure, and using that tool we can easily bootstrap a secure Kubernetes cluster. Right. So let me run the command. If I do kubeadm init to initialize the cluster, I also do have specific few options if I want to pass to. If I want to configure my Kubernetes cluster, I'm going to run right now with the default settings what we have, just to show you that how easy it is. And I also output this to a text file just for a reference later. I hit enter.
yeah, if you hold on here, let me take. So first of all, bootstrapping is we are configuring the Kubernetes cluster right now. We've already done a tool or installed a software called kubeadm. So what Rohan has done is on his machine, he installed a virtual box, sorry, a VMware host. On that VMware host, he created three machines. On that three machines, one machine is acting as a master node, other two machines are acting as a worker node. Now, if you have enough resources, you can do it on your laptop. But if you're not, the video which I mentioned earlier on the free class, you can go back and watch that one more time. And there we have given you steps on how you can do it on the Azure cloud, or you can do it on AWS cloud, or you can do on any cloud of your choice, as long as you have maybe two or three machines, where make one machine as a master node, other two machines as a worker node. So that's what what Rohan have done is he now configuring the Kubernetes, or he's initializing, or bootstrapping means creating that Kubernetes cluster using kubeadm tool. Over to you.
Thank you, Atul. Like, so I initialized the command and I said, set up the cluster for me. And Kubernetes does a bunch of stuff. It creates client certificates because it uses PKI for identification and communication between the components. It sets up a lot of pods and sets up a lot of configuration files, if I can, and all of that. And you saw how quick it was. And it said your Kubernetes control plane has been initialized successfully. And it then tells me what I need to do. It says, okay, if you want to start using your cluster, create these folders. I'm going to run this real quick. It also says you need to install an add-on, which I'm going to do right away. And I'm going to show you how our cluster is available. And it also tells me your master plane is ready right now. And it says if you want to join any number of worker nodes, you can do so by running the join command. It also gives me this token using which I can connect and run my worker nodes. I have a couple of worker nodes available with me, node 1 and node 2, on which I have done all the prerequisites what it needs. So all I need to do is run the kubeadm join command, right?
So
And it
hold on,
says,
hold on here. So now what we are doing, just to go back onto the original thing, we already have set up master node, and now we are going to the first node, which is my first worker node, and saying join that master node. So we already installed kubeadm and other prerequisite here, but now we are saying connect to my master so that master can talk to the worker node, and worker node can respond back to the cube node, worker node. Am I correct, Rohan?
that is absolutely correct. Yes. So if you look at it, then I ran the command from my worker node to join the cluster, which is available on this particular address. And this is the token for that. And it did do the pre-flight checks and all of that. And it says, this node has joined the cluster. It says, you're good to go. I did the same thing while Atul was speaking on node 2 as well. So if I go back to my node, if I go back to my master, kube master, and if I just run this simple command to just label them, if I do kubectl nodes, we see our cluster is ready. I have a master, which is, the role for that is the kube master is the host name, which acts as my control plane or the master server. And I also have two worker nodes, kube node 1 and node 2. So my Kubernetes cluster is ready to be used right now. Over to you, Atul, if you have to add anything.
Oh, no, no. So this is good, and I think there are a couple of questions are coming. I'll pick all those questions in a minute. But so now we have cluster is ready. Now we have my master node can see worker node, and worker node can see master node. Now we are ready to deploy the application. Now this application deployment we are going to do. So sorry, hold on. When we are saying kubectl get nodes, kubectl is actually firing command and connecting to my master node API server, and that connects. How does it know that, hey, I need to connect to this master node? Those are
Mhm.
all defined in a configuration file. Do you mind showing them one on kubeconfig?
Yes, I will do right away. When I bootstrap the cluster, if I just scroll up a little bit, it says if you want to start using your cluster, copy these commands. And one of the files which asked me to copy is the config file. Let me quickly open the config file, which I have inside a hidden folder called as cube. And let me do one thing. Let me cat it. And that has the certificate details. More importantly, it has the details of where my server is running and it's available on which port. Another point I missed telling is when we do the prerequisites, we also ensure that certain ports are open, like 6443 for my API server, or 2379 for my HCD and stuff like that.
So
So
hold
we
on,
have
hold on.
already done all of that.
Yeah, so hold on. So 6443 is the API server port number it's listening. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you have
Yes, that is
do you have a minute on it? Oh, yeah, okay. Otherwise, let's move on. So, guys,
correct.
this is how it knows that I'm listening on this port number. These port numbers should be open, so that the machine from where we're connecting, we're hitting API server. Brilliant. Now we are going to ready. Let's assume you need to now deploy an application. Your developers have developed the application. They've converted into an image. That image is available. They converted using something called as a Docker file. The Docker file is also available, or we've covered it in the previous week. So let's continue here, and now we are ready to deploy the application. Yep.
So what we're going to deploy today is on the screen you see a diagram, the architecture of a simple distributed application. We are going to deploy this outing app application, which is developed. It has the front end web app developed in Python, which lets you out between two options. We have a Redis queue, which collects the oath what we've given, and a .NET worker, which consumes your oaths and stores them in a PostgreSQL database. And we also have a Node.js web app, which shows these results of voting in real time. So we've tried to use multiple different technologies. What we have, all of them are running in different containers. We have 5 different containers here, and each one of them does a specific task. So this is what we're trying to deploy right now.
So hold
And
on,
let me.
hold on, yeah. So because at this opportunity, at this point, I want to take the question which is comes again and again. That
Mhm.
first of all, is Kubernetes just for Linux only, or is it for Windows, or vice versa? So both, whether you develop your application in Java, .NET, Python, PHP, whatever application you've developed, you can run it on Kubernetes. The only for the time being is that master node only works on Linux. Rest all worker node can be on Windows. So if you have a .NET based application, you might want to, you can have a worker node mix and match, some worker node on Windows based, and some worker node on Linux based. Now the another question comes is, then do I need to learn Linux? Again, you don't need to be a Linux guru in order to learn understand Kubernetes. All you need is a very basic commands like how do you open a file, how do you do vi editor. This is a question Abdul have taken from YouTube for you. All you need to, as long as you have a basic Linux commands knowledge, like how do you open a file, delete a file, permissions of the file, that should be more than enough. Now if you're part of our program, or if you join the program, then there'll be a bonus class for you about Linux for beginners, where we teach all these things for beginners. If you have no idea about Linux, it's good to know in current world Linux basic commands though. So if you see here, we are using a work on .NET based, and we are using database, we are using Redis, we are using web app. So pretty much everything we tried, Node.js, Python, everything we have tried to use here. Over to you, Rohan.
Thank you, Atul. So this is what we're trying to deploy right now, when all of them would run in different containers and will be deployed on the Kubernetes cluster what we have set up a few minutes ago. I have the source code available with me. Let me just cd into the particular folder and run you through the code real quick. I'm not really going to go a deep down into the code, but just to show and open a YAML file. A few minutes ago, Atul was talking about the nginx YAML file, which showed you how it can deploy a pod. I'm just quickly going to open one of them, maybe a Postgres database YAML file. And if I do quickly set the line number, exactly similar to what Atul was showing. It says your kind is pod, what are the labels for that, and what are the specification, what is the name of the container, what image it is going to use, and what environment variables we are setting, and at which port is my application listening, and stuff like that, right? And in this image is what we have our Postgres database which would run. So, and then similarly I have other files as well for my Redis, for my voting app, for my result app, and the worker node, right? All of them making use of different images, and I have different configuration, and the way they run. I can create or I can deploy all of them. I can create all of these objects at one command itself. I have the option to maybe create them individually, but then Kubernetes gives us option where I could create all of them together. Right? It makes it so easy for me. If I do kubectl apply and I tell them, take this, all of the files available inside the folder, and go ahead and get it deployed for me. So all I did was I had the source code available, written earlier, kept in a folder, and I said deploy. If you look at it, it just took me like a few seconds, right? Let us just verify if it really is created and it's working as it is telling us. If I do kubectl get pods, it says okay, couple of them are running, and I see a couple of pods are creating container, meaning they're trying to go to the Docker hub, and maybe they're getting the images downloaded and in the process of creating the container. If I put a watch on them, okay, my outing app is up, and the worker app, it might take a minute or maybe a few seconds more to go get into the running status.
But in
So
the meantime,
meanwhile, when
oh sorry, yeah, go ahead.
sorry,
I was taking questions. No, go ahead, yeah.
yeah, go ahead, Atul. You can take the questions if you
No, so
want
I
to.
think we'll take them later. We'll take them after the demo. Yeah.
Okay, so we also created something known as service, right? Service is an abstract a way to expose an application running on a set of pods, like as a network service, right? So with Kubernetes, we don't have to modify your application to use any of your unfamiliar service discovery mechanism. We can make use of the Kubernetes itself. Every pod gets their own IP address, and service gives a single DNS and a set of stable IP address and a port number and a DNS name using which we can access that application running inside the pod. Service also does load balancing for us. Let me just quickly check do if my container is up and running. Awesome. All of my containers are up and running. And while we created those, we also created the service as well. So let me quickly change, or let me leave it as it is.
Or
We
leave
see,
it as in the start access it. Yeah, that's
yeah.
fine.
So we have a couple of uh, services deployed at load balancer, and I let me open the application that is my outing app, which is available for me on this particular port. Right? It is using the node port kind of a service where it exposes the static port on the IP address of my node. So if I
Now,
bring up,
hold on. I'll take this question now. How many of you guys want to know more about networking on this? And if I see enough demand, probably put it in the chat. Yes, I'm interested in networking on Kubernetes, and we might go and explain these things because if you see now, there's a node port IP, host IP, the different load balancer, cluster IP. All those are different type of services. What these services mean? How does networking means or matter? If you put in the chat window, wherever you're watching that, say interested in networking in Kubernetes or interested in storage in Kubernetes, interested in maybe whatever topics you are, and then probably we can cover that next week as well if there's enough demand. And say, yes, I am. I'm not sure whether it's yes for this or not. Let's continue from here. Say, interested in networking, interested in storage, interested in whatever topic you want. So we can post accordingly. Vamsi is saying yes, interested in networking. Brilliant. Let's see if there are a couple of more requests, and then we'll probably do plan this something. Let's continue from here.
thank you, Atul. All right, so we have our application up and running. We have the services using which we can access it. I have a node port kind of a service where I have a port on which I can use my host IP address and the static port. And here you go. This is the outing application what I have, which is running inside the container. I get to decide between cats and dogs, and I also have uh, my Node.js application, which shows me the live results as well. Let me bring that out as well. It's running on the port 31049. So whatever out I did, let me just split the screen real quick. You see, I chose the dog, and then it gives me the result, right? So a simple application which lets you choose between two options. What you have, it uses different technologies underlying to to store the result, to process the result, and display the result. So all of them are running as containers. If I can show you that real quick, we see they all of them are running as different pods here, right? If I do kubectl get pods and I do hyphen o wide, just to show you that where are they running. They're running across different nodes of my cluster. I see one of the Postgres pod running on my node 1, my Redis pod running on node 2. All of them, the scheduler, the component, the architecture, what we were talking about, and what Atul was talking about. We said there is scheduler which takes care of scheduling your applications on different nodes. It's the scheduler which is chosen different nodes on where my application is deployed. And we also spoke about the API server, the HCD, and all of that. All of them are working together for our application to be available and accessible for us. Right. Over to
Brilliant.
you, Atul.
Yeah, brilliant. Or now just one or two opportunities questions. If I see here now, do you see one by one? So my pod, which is running on Postgres pod, is running one by one. I can have two, three, four, five, and if you kill it, it'll come up back again. Is there a way to kill it? Because I wanted to show someone just one kill one of the maybe front end app or something. You can see
Let me just
if you the
quickly check if they're running. Yes, they are running as a standalone pod. If I was running them
for
as a
deployment. Yeah,
deployment,
yeah, no, yeah, no, no, yeah, you're
yeah,
right. So there's another concept called deployment. If you run it using a deployment, right now we have done it as a standalone. So what is that deployment? That's the plan I'm thinking of covering, explaining. Right now they're running as a independent units. Ideally, we should have deployed using a deployment. When we deploy using a deployment, anything it will take care of the deployment part. Then if any of failure happens, scaling happens, we can configure all of them. So guys, let me know how was the feedback or how was the session so far. Was it good? Let me know in the chat window and put it in and say, and if you can make me and then as well, please put in the chat window, guys. And Shivansh, if you make me presenter back or screen back onto me.
Yes, sir. But I just have to mention one thing. A lot of our viewers have mentioned in the comment section that they're very much interested in networking as well.
Oh, brilliant. So let's plan out something on networking. We'll let you know networking deployment other part as well. So we'll plan something out on. Thank you very much on that. So, guys, if you have to rate it between 1 to 5, which one? What would you put? Put in the chat window. 5 being you're happy, and then put in the chat window and say if we could have done anything better. Would love to hear your feedback as well. HK is saying in YouTube and saying interested in deployment. Yeah, we'll try to cover deployment or talk a little bit more about deployments as well. Brilliant. So this is the application which we are deployed. As I said, we if you want to go do a little bit deeper and do how to prepare or interested to know more about this certification CKA, we talk about I think 21 step roadmap to go from a complete beginner knowing nothing to a certified Kubernetes administrator. You can check out by going to k21academy.com/CK02. There's a free class, roughly around a 90-minute to 2 hours class, where we talk all these things like what is Docker and Kubernetes, why you need to learn Kubernetes architecture, highly scalable applications, and then deploying. Today we saw a deployment. There we are going to deploy a container, a web server on Docker container. What is image, registry, pull, and the certifications. We talk about also Docker and Kubernetes on AWS cloud, which is ECS, EKS, and Fargate. So the free class is there's also something interesting inside the free class, k21academy.com/CK02. You can register on, I think its session will be happening tomorrow or next few days. So have a look at that and let my team know if you need any further help on the certification. Now, as I said, yet to come, based on we think and we'll see if we see enough comments or more comments. We'll be talking Kubernetes components like pod. We briefly touch base, but deployment, services, config map, secrets, and then Kubernetes networking, Kubernetes storage, and then questions that are yet to be done. Now, if you liked it, I would like you to take an opportunity to go and rate us and do it now before you forget. And 5 star for the good karma. How many 5 stars we got? So k21academy.com/review G. So k21academy.com review G. Thank you, Chandan, for on YouTube for past good pace. So I'll tell you how you can do. So go to this URL and say K21 so that it inspires us to do more and more of these sessions. So review G, and it'll take us to our Google page and our ratings. I think it should show us how many ratings I have, and we'll thank you for 5 star for good karma. We have 357 ratings so far or reviews on 4.8. So we'll really appreciate if you can give a feedback that will inspire us to do more and more of these free sessions. Now, as I said, yet to come is workload and scheduling, which is a part 2 of topics where we look at things like deployments, where you look these the services, deployments. Let me go back and say deployments, rolling updates, rollbacks, config maps, secrets, scaling an application, self-healing, and limiting your resources. So some of these things which and these are some of the clips which I've taken or video or the slides I've taken for our training program on certified Kubernetes administrator. So the services, pods, deployment, load balancing, and services concept. Then there is a deployment where you tell and say, I want 3 Nginx or 3 pods, it will go and do it for you. So there's something called as replica set, pod, and which provides us rolling update, rolling rollback, self-healing, and scalability capabilities. We'll also look at the labels and labels and services. How does that rolling update and rollbacks happen? Now, a lot of guys come and ask and say, hey, is there anything for um, if I have to run a batch kind of a work, I'm running a ETL extract, transform, load. I'm running my data applications. I want to use it for my ETL job. If you're coming from Microsoft Azure background or data background, maybe Azure Data Factory. If you're coming from Oracle background, you have Oracle Data Integrator and so on. So you can run your scheduling, anything that you want to schedule, you can do it using jobs and crons. Config map, any configurations, especially for developers. If you're a developer, you need to maintain your configurations. You don't put them into your application. You put them into something called as config map. We'll try to show something. We'll also talk about secrets. Again, I'm not promising everything, but we'll try to see these are the things that you should be knowing. And if time permits and if we have bandwidth, we'll be covering or these topics. Secrets, my username and passwords. Multi-container pod. Someone was asking, why should I do just one? What is recommended, or in what scenarios you will do multi-container pods? So that, and then what are the different patterns? And this is important for if you're a architect, if you're a developer, the multi-container pod pattern like sidecar, adapters, ambassadors. Then third is networking, where you need to know about connectivity between ports, cluster IP, node port, load balancing. There's something called as ingress controllers, all those things. So how does your cluster can see the application that we saw today? And then how does um, if my how does these services are configured within within my containers, or what is the ingress controller means, and so on. Then there is something called as network policy, which is the pod by default can talk to each other. We'll be talking about that. And there is a labels and containers and so on. Then fourth topic is about storage in that certification, where you look at storage, different type of storage. There's something called as persistent volume and persistent volume claim. Also, how do you take that volume, control of that volume in AWS cloud or Azure cloud or Google cloud or an on-premise world? And then fifth and final topic, which is around 30%, is troubleshooting. So there are different type of logging, like logging at a node level, logging at a agent level, and a application level as well, and so on. Then how do you make sure that your application is running? There's something called as probes, liveliness and probes. And as I said, um, if you want to go little bit deeper, there's a free class which we said k2academy.com/CKA02. And there are a lot of success stories. Piyush is here. He is also probably, we hired him. He was out of college, just out of college last year. And we hired him, and we run over this program, which I was talking about, a program that um, that whether a even someone from a fresh out of college can learn and do these things as well. And that is what he's showing. And given that you're so brilliant, we've hired him as well. There's another one, Tushar, and so on. Success stories and success stories and success stories. There are a lot of guys who, like you, are have done these. So just to give you a little bit of inspiration, that there are a lot of job opportunities available in this space. And if you've not started your container journey, if you've not started your Kubernetes journey, make sure that you learn them. So I think with that, I'm going to close it, unless let's take few questions, and then we'll hand it over, and then we'll close it. Anything that you want to add, Rohan, from here? I think if you see any question that you can pick it, or you want to pick.
Sure. I'm good, Atul. I'll leave that to
Oh,
you.
good. Okay, good. Okay, so this is a program which is talking about Dockers and certified. In right now, again, let's not worry too much about this. Let me give you the free class on this is the free class which will be referring. um uh, Shivansh, if you can pick up questions, or we are done. If we are done with the day, let me see if there's any question that I want to pick here. Hold on. Any questions for me from here? Okay, no, I probably might have to use a tool. Or any questions for me, Shivansh, you want to take?
No, sir. Majority of the questions are already answered by the
Okay.
team.
Brilliant, brilliant. Guys, if you still have any questions, if you're watching this as a replay later, make sure that you ask those questions, and I'll try my ask my team to respond those questions as well. I have YouTube in front of me, where I think people are asking about more on deployment. Brilliant. I think Linux I've covered. Okay, I think with that, let's wrap it up, and let's call it a day. Thank you very, very much, Rohan, for doing that quick demo. And I hope you guys all time well spent. Um, with that, we I think are 14 minutes over, and we'll try to limit it next time on. We'll go spot on directly on next time this happens. So we'll see you next week, same time, and talking about I think deployment and other components on Docker and Kubernetes. Thanks, Shivan. Thanks, everyone, and bye for now.
Thank you, Atul.